is very close to them. They don't want to share it. I mean, no offense, but if they want to go further on to some middlemen, you have to start realizing that you're part of a bigger team. Someone choose to use the word compromise, but I don't do that. I use words as teamwork and open mind and collaboration, and I think that's the change. That's a basic change. You have to open your project up for other people and realize that once you go to other people with the projects, it's not you anymore. This film is not. I mean, Warren Leach is not about me anymore. It's part of a bigger team. It's part of something bigger, and if I keep keeping it to myself and denying all the changes and all, and it won't get me anywhere.
So, I mean, that has echoes across into books and publishing as well. You know, what is the benefit of having a publisher? And I refer to this Faber quote. You know, the fundamental maybe is the editor. What you see with a movie up on the screen, you don't expect that to have been all done by one person, although in this instance actually it was in a back bedroom. But generally speaking, we all accept that it takes a team effort to make a movie, but maybe we're not so appreciative of the fact that it takes a team effort to make a book. And although what we buy at the end of the day is a brand and author, behind that author are an awful lot of functionaries that actually produce the book. And I don't know what your view of that is, Boyd. Do you feel that your books, I hesitate to say this, are they going to be better now they've been re-edited and republished?
I think everybody needs editors. And when I self-published, I was lucky enough to have a lot of smart people that were friends and family of mine that could give me feedback. And many people don't have that. And so one of the dangers for a lot of self-published authors is that they don't go through that process that I think really makes something professional. And so they just post the first draft that they have, and it goes nowhere because people see that it's not ready to be out there. Now, for the Ark, we did do some editing when I finally got a publisher, but for the other two books, we're doing extensive editing, and I'm very glad that I have those professionals to help me do this, because, and that's just talking about the editing. There's the marketing and creating the packaging, the book cover, and all of that I had to do on my own when I was putting my books up on Amazon. And I think they look pretty good, which was one reason that I think my books sold is when you saw them on Amazon, you couldn't really tell that it wasn't from a publisher. And I think that gave people a little more confidence to take a chance on an unknown like me. And then I also had blurbs from best-selling authors who I've gotten to know by going to writers' conferences, and that certainly helped give the impression that somebody who you might trust feels that this book is worthwhile. And that's, I think, what a publisher does. You know, if Simon & Schuster comes out with a book, you may not like it, but it does have a certain, standard of quality that they've, shown that they think that this is ready to be put out into the world.
I think when we talk about marketing, and at the end of it, I would say this, wouldn't I, being from a marketing background, I think actually it all comes down to marketing. And what troubles me with the Faber quote, at the end of the day, without editors, etc., we're just a marketing consultancy. Well, if that's all they've got to offer other than editors, then they're in trouble, because I don't think they market very well. They are not particularly competent as an industry at marketing. I think they can do an awful lot better, and I think that is really evidenced by the fact that if you produce something which looks like it's come from a publisher, and that's as simple as a decent looking cover, because until you actually buy the thing and read it, is it well edited? Well, you're not really going to know, are you? The problem that publishers have is that they have never had a relationship with their end user. They have not built their brands to end users. Their sales channel has been to bookshops and to distributors. And where we are now is in a world where you can speak directly to your customer. There is a democratization of access to the customer. And that's where, particularly the publishing industry, I think, has got its issues. But having said that, when you start marketing anything, you have to decide your objective. And I know both these guys are saying they didn't have any form of strategy or plan. But where they slightly differed is that Shaun was very specifically looking to get in front of a producer, of an agent, whereas I think Boyd was really at the point where it was, well, this can't do us any harm, let's see where it leads. But I think it brings us to an important question, and that is, how do you bring yourself to the attention of the mainstream, if that's what you want? And if you've got there, actually, is it a good idea? Because presumably, looking at the figures that you were getting when you were selling your books yourself on Amazon, I would imagine the percentages that you're getting now on the books that are sold are an awful lot smaller. So is it a difficult judgment call, if you've managed to build an audience on your own, to then let that go?
Well, one thing that self-publishing gives you is a baseline. So I knew exactly how much I was earning per month selling the books on my own. And so if a publisher wasn't willing to give me, say, 2 years of that at least in terms of an advance, well, then it wasn't really worth it to me. I can just continue to sell the books on my own and make money, and I'd be fine. So in that way, it makes self-publishing gives a lot more leverage to authors that they didn't have before, because before, you basically would take it or leave it, the offer that the publisher gave you. And certainly if there's auctions between different publishers, that's different. But if, it's a question of, I'll take $5,000 from this publisher as an advance, or not do it and make zero, then, well, $5,000 is better than nothing. But if you can self-publish now and make $5,000 every 6 months, well, why would I ever take that deal? So now you can say, well, no, give me $20,000 or whatever your price is. I think for an author, they have a lot of things to consider when they're trying to decide on taking on a publisher. One thing that I couldn't do as a self-published electronic book author was get into bookstores. Yes, electronic books are growing at an exponential rate, but it's still a fairly small part of the market. And that will probably change in the next 2 years, maybe. I don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. I mean, 2 years ago, couldn't even find a publisher. But I could never have gotten into mainstream bookstores without the backing of a publisher. And so that's still a huge part of the market. And I also would probably not have all the foreign deals I have, because foreign publishers look to my home country as, giving that stamp of approval that, okay, then I'm going to take this on in Germany or Italy and publish it there. Whereas if I was just self-published, they would have no idea. We've seen that the international, I come from a U.S. perspective, but foreign language rights can be a very lucrative part of the market. I think, a good example coming from the U.S., Stieg Larsson has sold 40 million books worldwide, and only about 15% of those are in the U.S. So, those foreign deals can be worth a lot. And if you're self-publishing, you may be foregoing that. So that may be another decision point, that you may not make as much on the royalties for a U.S. book deal, but if you can also start getting Germany and Holland and Italy and Denmark and a lot of other countries, then it can more than make up for it.
So I guess what we're coming around to saying is that being an author, when you're struggling to find an agent or a publisher, is all about writing the book, writing this book, getting the agent, getting the publisher. But actually, what you move to is then, I've become a business, and I now have to look at the way that I develop my business and my brand as well. what I think is interesting in that, and I think maybe where the middlemen really prove their worth then, is if, as creative artists, there is a recognition that you move. I don't know if anyone's ever read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, but he says you move from dependence to independence and finally to interdependence. And that is when you really become solid, when you recognize that you can achieve your best work actually collaborating, that you are driven to produce the best, not from independence, but from interdependence. And yeah, I understand. Yeah. And Shaun, I think that really was the message that you came out at the end of all of this with, was that the collaboration was what you ultimately get yourself into the position to be able to do.
Definitely. I think the key word is collaboration, teamwork, and that is the key word to getting there. And of course, you can use some tools. The whole this creative process, there of course got some business into it, and the golden rule of business: you earn what you save. And if you can emphasize that to some money people, producers, studios, or whatever, I think that will be the key word, especially nowadays because of the finance crisis. I always look at the positive side of everything. In the finances crisis, I was thinking, how can that benefit me? And of course, everyone is short of money, even Hollywood. So they are looking for people all around the globe who can do something they are doing for less amount of money. And that, I think, is a good thing nowadays.
Could we maybe have some questions?
Hi, thanks. Julian Friedman. It's not exactly a question. I thought what Boyd did was exactly the right thing, but there is an alternative. Once a self-published author has started to take off, I recently tried to sell a series of books by a writer called Wendy Alec, a series called Chronicle of Brothers, and we had an offer from Hachette, which we didn't think was enough because we did those exact same sums. We worked out that every time she sold a book, self-published, she got 5 times as much as her royalties, and their advance wasn't quite enough. But 3 titles had sold 250,000 copies. So in a bizarre way, publishers were a bit nervous that they couldn't necessarily sell more. So what we did was we hired the best book publicist company. We hired the best book distribution company. So what started as kind of like self-publishing from a back room has now become a business with reps going into bookshops all over the country with publicity that will work exactly as, in fact, these are the publicists that most publishers would have used to promote the books too. So I think if you're successful enough and you start selling enough copies, you can actually become a publisher of your own books in a way that's much more professional than ever before.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And one of the ways I look at it is also who's taking the risk in this process. I mean, certainly any author self-published could put a lot of money into publicity and finding a marketer and a good editor and paying a lot to design nice book covers, but they're taking on all the risk. And that's one thing a publisher does, is takes that risk on themselves when they pay you in advance. I heard something, I don't know if this figure is correct, but something like 80% of advances never earn out. And that's because publishers are taking the big risks that they'll find a Stieg Larsson that's going to just blow up and make them a ton of money that will support all of the other advances that never earn out. So certainly self-published authors can do that if they want to take on that risk.
Any more questions?
In all of your discussion, and it became clear to me, what you're really talking about is that even with all the rules obviously having changed over the last